I'm covering the news now. Here's 5 events you may have missed from yesterday from around the world. Starting off, US and Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. What the Pentagon report reveals. A newly leaked Pentagon intelligence suggests that recent US and Israeli airstrikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure have not fully eliminated Iran's nuclear program, only set it back by several months, not years, although this still depends on a few things not yet known. The leak came from the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, the Pentagon's internal military intelligence branch, and was labeled low confidence by the Joint Chiefs General, meaning it's still early and uncertain. Intelligence is being gathered from satellite images, seismic data, radiation sniffers, intercepted communications, and informants. Here's what happened. On June 22nd, the U.S. launched bunker buster strikes on Fordo, an underground enrichment facility buried in a mountain near Qom. June 23rd, Israel struck the site again, targeting tunnel access routes. Simultaneous strikes hit Isfahan, Iran's largest nuclear research center and uranium conversion site, and Natanz, their primary uranium enrichment facility. At Isfahan, images show complete destruction to the main uranium conversion facility. Natanz shows crater coverage underway, suggesting Iran is trying to repair or conceal damage. They may be able to regain access and resume activity there in a few weeks if the damage is light. Israeli strikes also targeted Mirabad Airport in Tehran and Shahid Raji University, believed to be involved in defense research. At Fordo, 6 large craters, scorched debris, and new damage to tunnel entrances are visible. Analysts believe the core enrichment infrastructure was not fully penetrated, but sensitive centrifuge machinery was likely damaged or disrupted. Iran may have moved its highly enriched uranium stockpiles and some of its centrifuges prior to the strikes to another mountain base named Pickaxe, which is also under international scrutiny. These concerns were raised after a fleet of trucks was seen leaving Fordo before the strike started. The damage dealt by these strikes in Iran has been extensive, but not decisive. The US has bought some time, but time will tell if Iran will be able to rebuild and resume its nuclear development program, which may further threaten peace in the Middle East if finished. Our next story. At a 2-day summit in The Hague, NATO's 32 member states agreed to increasing total military-related spending to 5% of GDP for each member by 2035, the largest spending target since the Cold War. It's a remarkable jump from the previous 2% guideline, which already isn't being met by 8 out of 32 NATO members. The summit, held under unprecedented security in the Netherlands, came amid fears of growing Russian aggression. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said Russia could pose a direct threat within 5 years. Of the 5% target, 3.5% must go directly to military forces and weapons. 1.5% can be spent on broader defense-related areas like cybersecurity, infrastructure, and civil readiness. Countries must submit annual plans, and NATO will review progress in 2029. U.S. President Donald Trump arrived at the summit with renewed pressure on member states to increase spending, despite past comments suggesting that he might not defend allies who, quote, don't pay. He publicly reaffirmed NATO's collective defense commitment, also known as Article 5, saying, quote, I stand with it. That's why I'm here. Trump also accused Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of freeloading by spending just 1.24% of GDP on defense. Trump claimed, quote, we're going to make them pay twice, though Spain, as an EU member, is largely protected from US trade threats. The French President Macron criticized Trump's simultaneous military demands and EU trade war, saying, quote, We can't ask allies to spend more on defense and start a trade war at the same time. Though most NATO members see Russia as a direct threat, Trump resisted directly accusing Russia for the war in Ukraine. The final communique described Russia as a long-term threat to Euro-Atlantic security, but did not name it as the aggressor in Ukraine or condemn their invasion of Ukraine. The omission, of course, reflects Trump's less confrontational stance towards Russia, even as countries like Poland, the Baltics, and Finland push for a harder stance. In the final statement, however, it was reaffirmed that direct contributions to Ukraine's defense and its defense industry will be counted towards the 5% goal. Trump and Zelensky had a one-on-one meeting where the failing ceasefire attempts between Russia and Ukraine were discussed, as well as the possibility of providing more air defenses to Ukraine and also sanctions on Russia. While Zelensky was at the summit in The Hague, there were bombs dropped in Dnipropetrovsk. On Tuesday, at least 20 people were killed and over 100 wounded in a wave of Russian airstrikes across southeastern and northeastern Ukraine, including the Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy regions. In Dnipropetrovsk, Russian ballistic missiles damaged schools, hospitals, and a passenger train. While no passengers were killed, footage showed bloodied civilians in the aftermath. Nearby, in the town of Samar, 2 more civilians were killed. Meanwhile, in Sumy, a separate drone strike killed 3 civilians, including a toddler. One 5-year-old boy was pulled alive from the rubble. Zelensky condemned the attacks, calling them evidence of Russia's complete disregard for life. Ukrainian officials accused Russia of intentionally sabotaging diplomacy, noting the strike's timing mirrored an earlier attack just before Zelensky's G7 meetings last week, which killed over 30. Dnipropetrovsk has come under growing Russian pressure in recent weeks, with small units reportedly crossing the front line and claiming footholds. Ukraine says it has pushed Russian forces back from the immediate border areas, but the strike shows Russia is still able to inflict mass civilian casualties far from the front lines. Talks in Istanbul last month resulted only in a prisoner exchange deal, with no progress towards peace. For the fourth story today, I'll be talking about a hospital attacked in Sudan. In Sudan, more than 40 people, including 6 children and 5 medics, were killed on Saturday when the Al-Mudlaj hospital in West Kordofan was hit during fighting between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, also known as the RSF. This is another tragedy happening as a result of the ongoing civil war. The hospital was the only functioning medical facility in the area and included a dialysis unit. It primarily treated civilians. 2 civil society groups and the RSF have blamed the Sudanese armed forces for the strike, though the SAF hasn't responded. The Sudan Doctors Network claims the SAF attacked in an attempt to kill RSF fighters allegedly stationed inside the hospital. The RSF has not confirmed or denied this. The WHO called the strike another appalling attack, and UNICEF warned of a deepening crisis for children. Sudan's civil war, now in its 3rd year, has displaced millions and led to mass atrocities like this one, including genocide allegations in Darfur and widespread sexual violence. This conflict is becoming one of the worst humanitarian disasters in the world today, with a total disregard for the civilian population, which suffers immensely. For the last story today, in Colombia, 57 soldiers who had been held captive in the mountains of Cauca were freed without a shot fired, according to Colombian Defense Minister Pedro Sanchez. The soldiers had been surrounded and detained by hundreds of coca-growing locals, reportedly under orders from EMC rebels, a small offshoot of the Marxist FARC group, which has been in a peace deal with the Colombian government since 2016. The standoff began after troops arrested a suspected EMC rebel and tried to airlift him out. However, an unusually large group of locals surrounded the soldiers and took them hostage. Colombia's military then launched Operation Justice, deployed reinforcements, and arrested 20 people. The EMC hasn't commented, but local media suggests that they may have ordered the kidnappings. Over 90% of the region's population depends on coca, the plant used for cocaine, and the Army's presence is seen as a threat to EMC, which engages in illegal cocaine trafficking. That's the world as it was yesterday. Thanks for watching. I may continue this as a series, but for now it's an experimental project. So maybe I'll be back tomorrow with 5 more stories.